and thank you for inviting me to speak today. I have long wished to travel to your country, your great and historic and beautiful country. And although I'm only traveling remotely today, I'm really delighted to be amongst you. I am deeply impressed by the ambition and the passion that your country is showing in its desire to reform and improve its education, and also to take the very bold step of benchmarking yourself against the best in the world in reading. I will try to draw on my experience as a school teacher, as Her Majesty's Inspector of Schools, and as a director in the Prime Minister's Livery Unit here in England with responsibility for implementing our national strategies in reading, to reflect on your next steps in terms of preparing for Pearls. I have to say, I am impressed by the poll that you already know a lot about Pearls and that you are confident that your children will do well, but you have set yourself the ambition of being in the top 30 in the fairly near future now in education. So how can we prepare? You have already done an immense amount of work in terms of analysing best practice, in terms of seeing what other countries are doing, and in terms of beginning to prepare your teachers for teaching better in the classroom and for preparing your children for Pearls. But I think there are 4 things in particular that I'd like to talk about. And Rahima, if you would put the slide up with the 4 areas now, please. The next slide, please. I think there are 4 key areas that would be helpful in preparing your pupils. One is to ensure that you have the best possible teaching of reading in your classrooms. And there has already been a lot of focus on that, and you yourself think that's where your focus has to be. The second is to encourage reading at home that builds on this experience, because we know children learn to read in the classroom, they learn to read in the school more widely, and they also learn to read at home. And you yourselves have identified that as the second most important priority in terms of things you need to tackle. And then there are 2 other things. There is ensuring that your curriculum matches the Pearls expectations. And you've already heard from previous speakers about how you're trying to make that alignment. And the final thing is just to build the confidence of your pupils with the actual assessment types in Pearls. Because although Pearls assesses reading, the children, the pupils, respond to the tests in writing. And it's really important that they can, as well as doing the reading, produce the written responses they need. So let me speak a little more about each of these areas. Firstly, about ensuring the best possible teaching in the classroom. And we all know from international surveys that the factor that most impacts on children's achievement is the teaching in the classroom. And I think within this, there are 4 things I'd like to say. Firstly, is to really continue to emphasize the importance of reading. As John has said, reading is vitally important in improving the life chances of children. And this is all children. All children. It's vital that all children learn to read and learn to read well, because it accesses the whole curriculum and it accesses wider life chances for them and greater happiness in their lives. It's also vital to the prosperity of the country. So reinforcing the message and communicating the message that reading is a very high priority for the individual child and for the country as a whole. And in this way, we can motivate and inspire our teachers and build the enthusiasm that's needed to teach well. The second thing I'd say is to build on existing best practice. Every country in the world has pockets of best practice in reading. You in Uzbekistan already have some absolute experts, some best practice. And much can be done to build on the existing best practice through modeling lessons, through sharing videos, through sharing schemes of work that already work and that are already successful. And we know a lot about how a well-structured lesson with good use of assessment and learning through and with other people in a classroom, how that can have a dramatic impact on improving children's learning. And that practice already exists, and building on it is really important. And that, as John said, will also build a love of learning through motivated teachers, and a love of learning will lead to the children achieving higher results. The third thing I'd like to say is that teachers learn well from webinars, they learn well from books, they learn well from training, but they learn best from one another. So getting teachers to work together, to share best practice, to talk through problems they have with learning is a really powerful way for teachers to learn from one another about what is really effective. And if you look at countries like Finland, that's where best practice is shared amongst teachers in a way that is very professional and very impactful. And the final thing I'd like to say on improving classroom teaching is that the role of the principal in countries that do well is very, very important. You didn't rate it very highly in your priorities, but it is really important. The leader, the principal, is vital in terms of ensuring there is a strong focus on reading, a strong priority on reading, that quality in classroom teaching is sustained in reading, and the principal has a crucial job in motivating and inspiring teachers and ensure that day in, day out, high quality teaching is sustained. So that's vitally important. The second aspect, and the one that you've also identified, is the one of building on reading in the classroom by encouraging reading at home. And there are two crucial factors here. If you could go to the next slide, please, Rahima. And that is communicating with parents the importance of reading at home. And if you look at countries like Poland, they had a very powerful campaign where all of Poland reads to kids, and parents were encouraged to read aloud for 20 minutes per day to their children. The Pearls report really emphasized how important reading at home is to build on that school experience. And schools in countries like England, like Ireland, hold workshops for parents. The principal plays a key role in communicating with parents through Twitter, through websites, through other forms of communication, the importance of reading. The second thing is about matching the reading that the child is doing in the classroom with the books that the child takes home with them and reads with their parents, to make sure that as they are learning their early word recognition through phonics, that the books that they're using in school they take home, and that a parent can see what they're doing, can read with their child, and can comment on a log that the child takes home with them, how well their child is doing. So that engagement of parents is really important. And I think one thing we've learned through COVID with children working from home is how important working from home can be. Schools have been very successful in using Google Classrooms and other forms of media to help children learn at home. And we can now build on that experience and build that into our normal classroom teaching. The third thing I'd like to say is the one about matching Pearl's expectations to the curriculum. This sounds incredibly obvious, but when I was working in the UK advising ministers on being successful in international surveys like PISA and Pearl's, a problem was that the ministers were wanting to emphasize certain things in the curriculum like processes in maths, but were not giving enough emphasis to the more interpretive skills that children needed to do well in the test. And if you look down the skills that Pearls is asking for, it's based both on a literary experience and on inquiring and using information. And both of those types of reading need to be in the curriculum. Interesting enough, countries like Singapore have moved over very much to teaching reading through, and English and grammar indeed, through text, through literary text, rather than through worksheets and exercises. So that's the importance of literary and acquiring information. And if you look at the skills that they need to be able to do, they need to be able to make inferences, interpret and integrate ideas, and evaluate and critique content. So there are some higher order skills in here that need to be included in what we teach our children in the classroom if we expect them to do well in these tests. And I know that's something that your minister talked about and that you have very much in hand. The final thing I'd like to say is that we need to build, can you do the next slide, please? We need to build the confidence with the assessment types. And we need to build the confidence that children can do good written assessments, both multiple choice and constructed response questions. And the constructed response questions is sometimes where children who can read relatively well don't quite have the ability to actually produce a constructive written response. And we need to make sure they can do that as well. And we need to make sure that students are comfortable with both paper-based and digital formats, if that's the way that the country decides to take its assessment. So those are the 4 areas that I think would be helpful to consider. The final points I'd like to make are some sort of top tips. The next slide, please. Yes, you are doing long-term transformation of your curriculum. Yes, you are putting in place teaching standards. Yes, you are improving teachers through better training, but there are some things that can be done straight away that would be helpful in the coming Pearls exercise. And that's to get some of your expert teachers to share and write lesson plans that they use for their 4th grade that really work well. We could record some of your successful teachers modeling how to teach those lessons and sharing it with the rest of the teachers. Principals could focus on Pearls and 4th grade teaching as a focus that they would use for talking to teachers, for visiting classrooms, for looking and listening at children's work. To focus on that area would be a very helpful focus for principals to take. And identify champions, identify people who could speak loudly in each school and promote Pearls and promote successful reading for Pearls. And finally, to communicate. The importance of reading, the importance of Pearls, the importance that children read well, that all children read well for their life chances and for the success of your great country as a whole. In looking down the list of the top 10 countries, there's nothing magic about the countries that do well in Pearls. Some of them have been successful countries for a long time, like Finland, like Singapore, but there are others in that list that we wouldn't have expected, like Poland, like Northern Ireland. There's nothing special about these countries. There's nothing magic about doing well in reading. It's about putting in place good teaching. It's about focusing on the right things, and it's about learning from others, but doing it your way, doing it the Uzbekistan way, and doing it with commitment and passion. Thank you very much.